Master9351 here, and in today's video I'm going to be talking about whether or not Skylanders as a whole will hold their collectible value and actually become proper collector's items in the future. Now, this is a video that I've actually put a lot of thought and research into, and the main reason for that is because back in 2015, I believe it was, before I really revamped my channel and started taking YouTube seriously, I made a kind of pathetic video about will Skylanders hold their value, and it's not exactly a video I am terribly proud of, and I wanted to redo this video today with more data, and now that we're living in a world where there's no more Skylander console games, at least for the foreseeable future, I think it's slightly more relevant, at least as of right now. So let's first dive in to this topic about will Skylanders hold their collectible value. Now, the first thing that I want to go ahead and address in this video is that I'm actually going to be talking about a little bit more than just Skylanders in this video. I'm also going to be talking about LEGO Dimensions and Disney Infinity and Amiibo, because all of them being Toys to Life games are slightly relevant. But the first thing that I want to go ahead and talk about is how Amiibo and the other three that I just mentioned, Skylanders, Disney Infinity, and LEGO Dimensions, are actually very different, and why I can't create a direct comparison between Amiibo and Skylanders in terms of collectible value. So, in case you're unaware, Amiibos were really hard to get. At least some of them were really hard to get for a while there. Now, I don't remember the exact Amiibos that were difficult to get. I just know there were some hard to find Amiibos, because I have a friend who collected Amiibos and always told me, if you see these Amiibos, buy them, give them to me, I'll pay you back and more for these Amiibos because I really need these Amiibos. So, Amiibos are basically like a stock market right now, or at least they were to a greater extent in the past. Nintendo has solved a lot of their rarity issues in the recent months, causing a lot of the prices to go down as of late. But Amiibos, back when they were extraordinarily rare, it was an extreme return on investment, at least in the short term, to buy the Amiibos and then resell them when they became rare. Not all Amiibos would become rare, but some would. A lot of them would. Like half of them would actually become rare and have a pretty good resale value. The thing is, with Skylanders, that never really happened for Skylanders, LEGO Dimensions, or Disney Infinity. There were never any variants, even, that were extraordinarily rare in the short term to that extent. Yes, there were a few, such as the Light and Dark expansion packs from Skylanders Trap Team that seemed to be pretty common at first, and then you bought them and they became rare later on, and now are worth $150. And there's some that are like that. And Boomer and Darklight Crypt are also examples of that. But for the most part, the vast majority of Skylanders were pretty easy to get if you lived in a country where they came out and you went to the store at least a month after they came out. They were never anywhere near as difficult to get as some of those Amiibos were, with a few notable exceptions. That's the main thing I'm trying to say. Amiibos as a whole were rarer and harder to get as a whole set, which is why Amiibos are slightly different from Skylanders in the way the return on investment works. Also, Nintendo was very careful to re-release a lot of them, or at least restock a lot of them, to help get them to the consumers that really wanted Amiibo. We didn't see that with Skylanders or LEGO Dimensions or Disney Infinity. The whole rarity management thing was never really a thing that was done with any of those other properties, which is why they are slightly different from Amiibo. And in my opinion, Amiibos are most certainly going to hold their value. And that's actually reinforced by a chart that I saw that basically states that if you average all the prices of the Amiibo resale values together, it is above MSRP. That means that if you buy a random assortment of Amiibos, as long as they're all different, you are statistically likely to be able to go on eBay a couple months later and resell them for more than you bought them for. The same cannot be said for any of the other properties. With Skylanders, Disney Infinity, and LEGO Dimensions, if you just bought a lot of those, like a random assortment of 10 or 15 characters, and tried to resell them on eBay later on, you would not get a return on investment. They would be worth less than they were when you bought them. But, that being said, now we're going to shift back to Skylanders, Disney Infinity, and LEGO Dimensions. There are definitely a few notable exceptions that are, as of right now, actually worth a good bit of money. And I've done a little bit of research, and I'd like to read off a few examples of Skylanders that have drastically increased, or at least moderately increased in price, for really no apparent reason. So, some of these make sense, some of these make no sense at all. So, let's look at this for example. The Scorpion Striker Battle Pack from Giants retails for, originally retailed for $25. That's besides the point. But is currently available on eBay for $18. Definitely a decrease in the original value of the thing. Hot dog single packs that were released in limited quantities, however, are available for $19. Does that make a whole lot of sense why that many people would want a single pack hot dog? No, it doesn't. But does that change the fact that a single pack hot dog from Skylanders Giants is worth more than the battle pack he originally came in? Not really. Thumpback. Thumpback was not a rare character in the slightest during Skylanders Giants, but that being said, the cheapest you can get him on Amazon right now is $18. That being said, Ninjini was an exceptionally hard to find Skylander for a while, although she did later become more common, but still was not exactly that easy to get. Well, she retails for $10 on eBay right now. Why is that? Thumpback went up, and he was more common than Ninjini, who her price went down. No sense. That makes no sense whatsoever. Some of these make sense again, though. Series 2 Bash is currently worth $45 on eBay because he was only released in limited quantities in Wave 2 of Skylanders Giants and was never once again re-released. Now, here's the thing with the Series 2 Bash. No one knew he'd be hard to find. No one knew it at all. So no one tried to buy him up. No one tried to at all. Therefore, he ended up being worth a good bit. Series 2 Drobot, cheapest you can get him for $14. Well, he was never released in Europe, so that's why his price went up, because you couldn't get him in Europe, but not up to the extent that it's an absolutely ridiculous value. Again, though, some of these are kind of interesting. Again, this is Skylanders Swap Force now. So, Wind Up is worth $15 on eBay. His price went up, yet Trap Shadow went down. What? Mega Ram Spyro on his own is worth $16, but if you buy him in a triple pack, the whole triple pack is worth $13. And these are all new in box, by the way. If we go to Trap Team, let's get some more of these. Fizzy Frenzy Pop Fizz is worth $18. He was not hard to find in Trap Team, so I don't know why his price went up, and Enigmas went down to $10. That makes no sense at all. And then we have Nightmare and Nightlight, which are worth $9 and $10 respectively, but the Sunscraper Spire and Midnight Museum are worth $150 and $100 respectively. That makes sense though. Not to have increased to that extent, but it still makes sense that the price went up because of the fact that, well, they were incredibly rare and hard to find. But you're sensing a pattern here, right, in what I'm saying. The fact that there is very little things that you can do to predict what Skylanders are going to go up in price and go down in price. Now, if we reflect on these Skylanders, we can give a pretty good explanation as to why every Skylander went up in value or went down in value. There's a perfectly good explanation, and I was able to give it with every single one of the Skylanders that I just read off. If you name a single Skylander, I pretty much know how that Skylander was released in its respective game and can explain to you the relative rarity of it. It makes sense these prices do. But the thing is that because there was so little communication from Activision in the manner of release of the Skylanders, and they did very little to try to manage the release of these things, the predictability was zero on any of these Skylanders. What was going to be rare and what was not going to be rare. There was no predictability. With Infinity, though, let me explain this. So Infinity is kind of interesting because if you look at it, Infinity 1.0 stuff is expensive. Infinity 2.0 stuff, for the most part, is slightly less expensive than 1.0. 3.0 is worth very little, if anything, because of the way that each thing was sold. See, and the reason that 3.0 is worth so little is because everything went on sale when Infinity, went under. And now that you're basically able to get them for pretty cheap because a lot of people bought them for cheap and Infinity was on its way out with 3.0. So that's the reason of that. But again, Who could have predicted that 3.0 was going to be the last one? It's complicated. The point that I'm trying to make with this video is that you never know what's going to increase in value and what's not going to increase in value, actually decrease in value, until after it's all said and done. With, again, a few exceptions. What is this magical exception that I'm talking about with this? Well, chase variants. Chase variants for Skylanders have most certainly held their value. You want to get a gold and silver stink bomb, you're still going to pay almost $200 for one. That's the cheapest I could find it on eBay when I looked right before I made this video. It's kind of crazy, honestly, the value of a lot of these chase variants. And I am not as experienced with the value of chase variants because I don't even own a single chase variant from Skylanders. So someone out there who's maybe more well-versed on the value of chase variants, I'd love if you could chime in the comments section of this video, because I'm genuinely curious to know how that has changed over time, if the value of these variants has increased or decreased, because I unfortunately do not have access to information to be able to know if the price has increased or decreased. I just know that you could buy a gold and silver stink bomb in a store theoretically for $15 and he's worth almost $200 on eBay, and that's a lot of money. Those have most certainly stayed valuable. Are they as valuable as they once were on eBay? I don't know. But do I know that you could buy one in store and get a return on investment? Yeah, you could. You could buy those in store and get a lot of money for absolute certainty. That being said, there's one thing that I'm genuinely curious to see how it develops for the Skylander collectibles in the long term. See, we're still dealing with the short term on a lot of these things. Skylanders came out only 7 years ago. Hardly time for a true collectible thing to develop, a true collectible value. Yes, they're valuable now in the short term, but the question is still, will they be valuable in the long term? One thing that sort of scares me with this whole prospect of long-term value is that with Skylanders, we actually see a reverse trend as to what we do with Disney Infinity. Remember how I said that Disney Infinity 1.0 stuff is worth more than 2.0, which is worth more than 3.0? We see the opposite for Skylanders. To an extent, it's sort of a curve. So the cheapest right now is actually Spyro's Adventure. Giants is slightly more expensive, Swap Force is more expensive, Trap Team is probably the most expensive on average because of the fact that it had the Yawn Traps and the Midnight Museum and Sunscraper Spire. Some Supercharger stuff retained value, some did not. It's kind of weird. The vehicles are almost worthless. So it's kind of like you have Spyro's Adventure, Giants, Swap Force, Trap Team, Superchargers, Imaginators in terms of value. And that's kind of weird because that's not the same trend Disney Infinity followed, which is literally, you know, valuable, not as valuable, not valuable at all. That's the trend Disney Infinity follows. Unless you have like some of the super rare Infinity stuff that was sold at the very tail end of it, or some of the prototypes, which of course prototypes are always going to be valuable. But like, again, general rule of thumb, Skylanders, Disney Infinity. LEGO Dimensions stuff, pretty much not worth that much, collectively wise. There are a few that are worth some, but in general, LEGO Dimensions not worth their return on investment. But again, what I wanted to say was long-term investment, how's that going to pan out? Well, the thing that's interesting, again, to me with Skylanders is that the older games appear to not be worth as much as the current games, which is weird, because originally, if you wanted a Boomer or a Wham Shell, you were gonna pay a lot of money for a Boomer or a Wham Shell. But then they went and made Eon's Elite Boomer, and they made Lightcore Wham Shell, which definitely knocked the price of those original characters down significantly. Which leads me to a conclusion. Those characters were never valuable for their collectible value. They were valuable because people just wanted to play as those characters. And there are a lot of people that only ever bought one version of characters. I'm talking about the casual to semi-collectible, you know, demographic. They just wanted to play with Boomer. They just wanted to play with Wham Shell in-game. And as soon as there were other avenues to do that, the price went down. I remember when Wham Shells would retail for $50+, and now they don't retail but for like $15, and now Boomer, you can't even find a sealed Boomer on eBay, and a unpackaged Boomer is not that expensive. Again, because of Eon's Elite Boomer is my theory. They were worth a lot until they came out with that Eon's Elite. It's kind of weird how that works, but you would have thought that the value was there for the collectible, but it seemed like the value was actually there for the playable figure. Which leads me to this other thing. When Skylanders is no longer valued as a game, which is basically the world we live in today, where, no Skylander console games for the foreseeable future. Say we get, 2 more years out. It's 2020, right? Maybe there's a new game coming in 2021, but in 2020, there's no new game. Just hypothetical situation, right? Are these things going to be worth anything if we don't want to play with them in video games anymore? Are they going to be worth anything? And that is a massive question. Will they fade into obscurity, or will they retain their value? I really wish I had an answer to this question, but at this point in time, we do not have enough data to answer the question. But the general thing that seems to stick out to me is that standard Skylanders won't hold their value, and neither will in-game variants. The only thing that appears to hold the value in Skylanders are exceptionally rare and hard to find things like the Midnight Museum or Sunscraper Spire, and things that are chase variants as well. That seems like it's going to be the only stuff that's going to hold value. And I think the Midnight Museum and Sunscraper Spire actually shows us again that the price was there. We're not paying money to collect these things. We were paying money to play them in games, because the Sunscraper Spire and Midnight Museum ballooned in price like nothing I've ever seen before in Skylanders, except for maybe Darklight Crypt. What do those 3 things have in common though? Sunscraper Spire, Midnight Museum, and Darklight Crypt? They are all adventure packs. Ghost Roaster was valuable. Yes, he ended up ballooning to I think $60 or $70. But Ghost Roaster was still not the sought-after piece in this theory. It was the Darklight Crypt. It's the Sunscraper Spire. It's the Midnight Museum. That's what people want, because they literally unlocked an entirely new level in Skylanders. And I think the reason that Ghost Roaster went down in price was A, because of that adventure pack, but B, Eon's Elite, but B, because adventure packs after Giants didn't do anything in future games, and people didn't want to go back to the original games and play Darklight Crypt. It lost its value because it lost its gameplay. That's why Skylanders didn't hold their value. Chase variants were never valued for their gameplay. They were only ever valued for their cosmetics. But I will say, this theory is not 100% bulletproof because of the fact that you have characters like Chompy Mage and the Yawn Traps. Why does this not hold theory? Because Yawn Traps work the same way as every other trap in Trap Team did, yet they still became collector's items. Chompy Mage works the same way as Jingle Bell Chompy Mage, which is available for like $15, $20 on eBay, whereas you'd have to pay $200 for Chompy Mage, or I can't remember how much it is for Chompy Mage. It's a lot of money. So it's not 100% watertight, this theory that they lose their value because they lose their gameplay, but that's what it seems like to me. That being said though, if Activision comes out with another game in 2020 and they say you can use all of your Skylanders in this new game, I think that Skylanders will hold their value at least until then. But as of right now, it doesn't look like these guys are really going to hold that much collectible value, which is kind of sad. But who knows? Because here's the thing I wanted to talk about. No one ever knows what's going to be collectible, with a couple exceptions like the chase variants. But in general, no one knows what's going to be collectible. Let me give you a pretty good example of that. Comic books are a thing that everyone thought would be worthless at one point in time, like in the 1960s, when the original comics came out featuring Batman, Superman, etc. You know, your Marvel characters too. Batman and Superman are the most significant though, because of the fact that, well, They found old comics, is what I'm trying to say, of Batman and Superman, and basically there were not a whole lot of them remaining. There were, I think, 168,000 original comics made that featured Superman for the first time. Don't hold me to that. I was looking at an article before I made this video, and I'm pretty sure the number was 168,000. Today, only 100 copies of that original comic remain, because no one in a million years thought in the 1960s that those comics would even be vaguely wanted, 40, 50 years later. No one thought they'd be valuable, so they got rid of them. Everyone got rid of their comics. So the few people that did not get rid of their comics and ended up rediscovering these comics later on are met with the fact that, hey, wait a second, this comic that I thought had no value in the 60s has $2 million worth of value today. Now, again, the reason that the price ballooned that much is because no one thought they'd be valuable. And I read a theory a long time ago about new in-the-box Skylanders that may very well hold water in this context. How many people do you know that kept every Skylander in the box? How many unboxed versions? This is not a good example. He came in an adventure package. Grabbed the first one I could. Sorry. How many people do you think just kept High Five in his box? Probably not a whole lot of people. How many people do you think kept the legendary variants in a box? Probably a few more. How many people do you think kept the chase variants in their box? Everyone that got a chase variant. Now, chase variants will always be rare because there were only 500 to however many of them were made in the first place. They were limited. But the point is that in the long term, I do have a theory, and it's that new in the box standard Skylanders will overtake the value of new in the box in-game variants. For the simple fact that a lot of people kept their in-game variants in the box, a lot of people did not keep their standard characters in the box. They threw them away. They unboxed them. So, it's possible, I'm not saying it's guaranteed, but it's possible that new in-the-box random character Skylanders will in the long term be worth more than variant Skylanders that are new in the box. See, that's the thing. The things that people think aren't valuable sometimes turn out to be what becomes valuable. Like, think about it. If everyone keeps something, then it's common. But if everyone throws something away and only a few people keep it, and then that somehow ends up being important later on, well, those people now have a collector's item. It's not common for things like that to happen these days because the culture of today is different. We have a collector's culture today, whereas we did not have a collector's culture when originally those comics came out in the 60s. That's just a really good example that I like to use in how things that we didn't think were worth money could end up being worth money. So in the long term, who knows what could happen. But as of right now, unboxed Skylanders are definitely not going to hold their value, but if you wanted to right now, I guarantee you could sell your entire collection of Skylanders for anywhere between 60 to 90% of the price on eBay, depending on how lucky you get. You can get a pretty good return on investment of unboxed Skylanders as of right now if you sold them the correct way, because some are worth slightly more, some are worth slightly less, and in the end they kind of balance out to be worth anywhere, like I said, 60 to 80%. I may even bump that to 70 to 90, just depending on how lucky you can get. It really just depends. But anyways, that is it for the long video on will Skylanders retain their value. And I wish I had more answers for whether or not they would retain their value or not. But the truth be told, we just don't have enough data to be able to form a concrete answer to that. So it's kind of unfortunate, but yeah, that's just the that just be how things be. But yes, that's all I have for you guys today. Tell me down in the comments your thoughts on this topic. Do you think Skylanders will retain their value? And if you're someone who has a lot of knowledge about Skylanders chase variants, please tell me down in the comments how the prices on those have changed over the years, because unfortunately that's not something I have a whole lot of experience with. Anyways though, like I said, that's all for now. This has been Portal Master 9351. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and shout out to all my patrons on Patreon, especially Liam Corner, The Collector Creepypasta, and Portal Power TV. That's all for now. See you guys next time.